cutting in half, then cutting this in half. We're getting somewhere. How can I serve an easy dinner while baking up a side of bread at the same time? Betty Crocker's answer, dinner in a dish. I'm Melinda and I'm cooking my way through Betty Crocker's 1971 recipe card library. Today we're making dinner in a dish, which is from section C, budget casseroles, card number 22. This card may look a little unassuming at first. It was pointed out to me by one of my viewers, and once I took a closer look at it, I realized that this is a really great idea. Essentially, you are making a pretty simple casserole. It's kind of like a creamy meat and vegetable casserole. But what's interesting is that while you bake the casserole, you are baking the dinner roll, which is supposed to go on the side, on top of the casserole so that they're done at the same time. I think that's really smart. And you're making cheese crescents for this recipe, which I'm really excited for. I've made crescent rolls from like the Pillsbury can, but I've never made them from scratch. And I think by adding cheese to them, that'll give it some extra flavor and texture. So I'm really excited to give the cheese crescents a try. The casserole, we'll see how it goes. But you know, I think it's a smart idea. We'll see how it turns out. So let's get started. All right, I have all my ingredients ready to go for our casserole. But first, I just wanted to share this with you. I might have shown this on the channel before, but this is Betty Crocker's Dinner in a Dish cookbook, which is funny because the whole cookbook is named after this one recipe, but this particular recipe isn't in this cookbook. That's so bizarre. But this cookbook's from the 1960s. I believe it was 65. Which was like primo casserole time. That's kind of the height of the casserole as the 1960s. And I feel like we make a lot of casseroles on this channel. I get a lot of requests to make casseroles because it is such a quintessential mid-century dish, and it's kind of designed that way for a reason. I feel like in the 1960s, it was kind of the ultimate sign of being a housewife or a hostess if you made a casserole. It was a perfect dish because you could put everything together really easy and then like go out and entertain your guests. So it was like a great way for a hostess to make a really delicious, easy meal that could still like be really fancy and exciting while not having to like be in the kitchen all day making tons of, you know, different components and putting them all together. There were less dishes to clean up at the end of the night, so it just made entertaining so much easier to have a casserole. So I feel like that's why it makes sense that this dinner in a dish recipe and all of the casseroles in the library exist, and it's definitely what led Betty Crocker to make a whole separate cookbook just for casseroles. So our first step here is a little bizarre. We're just arranging a few ingredients in the bottom of a casserole dish. So the recipe calls for some celery. So I have some cut up celery that's going in the bottom first. And then the recipe calls for 2 cups of cut up cooked meat. She doesn't say what kind. I guess you could use any. But I thought chicken might be nice in this dish with a cream sauce. I also thought because the recipe also calls for hard-boiled eggs, you have kind of a chicken and egg situation going on. I don't know if it's weird or not. Anyway, I just have some rotisserie chicken that I've cut up, and so that's getting arranged in the bottom as well. I don't know, like, am I supposed to mix this or like, is it supposed to be layers? I don't know. She says arrange, so I guess I'm just doing it, you know, I'm just putting them all in. Okay, now we have 4 hard-boiled eggs cut in half. This is concerning to me. I hate hard-boiled eggs, and I'm not looking forward to eating them in this casserole. But I guess it is a way to kind of, you know, get extra protein and maybe stretch out your meat supply a bit by padding the casserole with some eggs as well as the meat. So we got all those in there. And now it's time to make the cream sauce. All right, we're over at the stove here and we're just getting started by melting a 1/4 cup of butter over heat. This will kind of be the base for our cream sauce. We see a lot of recipes that have this kind of white sauce in our recipe card library, and I suspect this is because it was a quite common recipe style during the Great Depression. Both flour and milk were provided by government services during the Great Depression. There was a program called Terra, which provided 28 quarts of milk a week for the average family of 5. That's a lot of milk. And so a lot of it was meant to be drank by the kids, but a lot of it was meant to be cooked with. And so you get a lot of these like milk-based cream sauce recipes. We've talked before about kind of how white food was seen as clean or dainty, but the white sauce also kind of elevated ordinary ingredients or tempered overpowering flavors. So like what we're making today, we're just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff into a casserole and coating it in white sauce. And it allowed for families to be really flexible with what they cooked because it kind of evened out the flavor of the dish. Okay, our butter is melted, so we're gonna add in our flour and get our roux going. Want to kind of get it toasted a little bit because that adds more flavor. I just feel like making a white sauce just made any ingredients more palatable. And you know, also added a lot of nutrients, which like especially during the 30s and 40s, it was really necessary to like pack as many nutrients as you could into very meager meals. Okay, now that this is going, I'm gonna also add the salt and pepper. This recipe calls for quite a lot of salt and pepper, which I'm excited by. There's a tendency for the sauces in this recipe library to be kind of bland. So I think this one is gonna have plenty of flavor. Now what I'm gonna do is take this off the heat. I'm gonna get my whisk, and we have 2 cups of milk going in. It smells really peppery, it's good. I'm trying to go slow so we don't have too clumpy of a mixture here. Okay, I'm gonna turn the heat back on. And we're just gonna cook over low heat, what's it say? Cook over low heat, stirring until mixture is smooth and bubbly. Heat to boiling, stirring constantly. So we're just out here whisking, stirring. We want it to get nice and thick. All right, so we're starting to see a light boil in our sauce, and it's getting much thicker, which is very exciting. It honestly looks and smells really good. I think this was the perfect ratio of ingredients this time. A lot of butter, good salt and pepper. And so now we're gonna add 2 more ingredients to this sauce just to finish it off. We have a little 1/4 cup of green bell pepper. Get in there, get in there. And then we have a small onion that's been diced. Just kind of get that incorporated a little bit. All right, let's go back over to the table and prepare our casserole. All right, we have a nice thick cream sauce. I'm feeling confident about this. It looks really good. And so I'm gonna go ahead and we'll just kind of drizzle it over the, the casserole here. We'll see what happens. Oh, it's heavy. This is gonna hopefully kind of sink down into all the nooks and crannies in between the chicken and the eggs and the celery. I'm curious as to why we put the celery at the bottom here and not in the sauce like we did the bell pepper and the onion, but who knows, who knows? Okay, the eggs are hidden now. I don't have to deal with them. Out of sight, out of mind. So now this is gonna go in a 425-degree oven, and Betty just says, there's no timeline here. There's no timeline of events. She's like, put it in the oven and then make the cheese crescents. To which I say, what if it takes me a long time to make these cheese crescents? I guess that's fine, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna put this in the oven, and then while it starts to like, I guess, get a head start on baking, we will prepare the cheese crescents. All right, it's time for our cheese crescents. So I am going to go ahead and measure the dry ingredients into a bowl. So we have 2 cups of flour here. And then we have some salt and some baking powder. All right, dry ingredients mixed together, easy peasy. Now, all right, so we have our dry ingredients mixed. I'm gonna go ahead and add our wet ingredients, which include 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil and 2/3 of a cup of milk. That all mixed together. It doesn't say when to put the cheese in. Is cheese considered a dry ingredient in this situation? I'm putting it in. Gotta get it in the mix. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. The recipe calls for shredded American cheese. If you watch this channel, you know I don't like American cheese. And I tried Velveeta shreds, and that like was a really overpowering Velveeta flavor. And I was like, that's not gonna be right for this. So I am using cheddar cheese. Sorry. I think cheddar cheese is gonna be good. I gotta do what makes sense for me and my taste buds, you know? Also, it's really hard to find American cheese. You can only buy American cheese in single slices these days. It's hard to find it shredded or in like a whole block you could shred yourself. So I don't feel guilty about what I've done. I think this cheddar cheese is gonna be great. I've done what I can here with the spoon. I think I gotta get in there with my hands. It says to knead it 10 times. Whatever that means. Like I said, I've never tried to make crescent rolls from scratch. I've only made them from the like Pillsbury canister, which was invented in 1965, around the time that this recipe was probably being made. The reason we're not using the Pillsbury can and why we're making our own is because during that time period, Pillsbury was actually a competitor of Betty Crocker and General Mills. But then in 2001, General Mills bought Pillsbury, and so they're not really competitors anymore. But it makes sense why I wasn't just told to use the pre-made crescent roll dough. All right, we have our final dough here. She says that I'm supposed to roll this to a 1/2 inch thick between 2 sheets of wax paper. I ran out of wax. I ran out of wax paper, this is all I got. So I also have some parchment paper. We'll see if this works for us. I think maybe parchment paper just wasn't very popular back then, so that's why she called for wax paper. Let's start rolling here. Let's see what happens. Do you think this is a 1/2 inch? I'm so bad at judging this. I think that is. Okay, I've got my pizza cutter here. I think that would be a good thing to use. We're gonna cut the circle into 12 wedges so that we get 12 crescents. I think if I cut it into 4 and then each quarter into 3, that's 12. Okay. Cutting in half. Then cutting this in half. We're getting somewhere. And we'll pick evenly the same size ones to go on our casserole, because only 6 are gonna go on the casserole. Like I said, they're not all the same size, but that's okay. That's fine. It's gonna be okay. We'll pick the like most similar size ones to go on the casserole. Like these 4 are all kind of the same. Roll up beginning at wide edges. So that's where we just go like this. This is the part I'm familiar with after making Pillsbury crescents. I was curious to know like when the crescent roll was invented. I know of course it's based on the croissant, which dates back to the 13th century. It was actually first invented in Vienna, and then it became popular in France in the 1830s. Originally, crescent rolls were made with brioche dough, whereas the French take on the croissant was a laminated pastry dough, so like lots of layers of butter in between the layers of dough. And that's how you get those flaky layers that you see in like a proper croissant. But what's confusing to me is that we're not making brioche dough or pastry dough today with these crescents. Brioche dough has eggs in it. The pastry dough has a lot of fat in it, and these don't. This is more of kind of like a quick leaven dough with the baking powder. So we'll see what happens. I feel like maybe the cheese is adding some extra fat. But yeah, it's curious that like this recipe for crescent rolls is not following a traditional croissant, and it's not following other types of bread rolls. So yeah, I don't really know, but I trust Betty. This does almost feel like kind of pizza dough-like in consistency, but there's no yeast in it. That's what's weird about it. We'll see if they puff up enough with that baking powder. All right, so I took the casserole out of the oven. It was in there for maybe like 10-ish minutes, 13 minutes while I was making the crescent rolls. And you can see that it is starting to brown around the edges, and the top is getting kind of firm, I guess you'd say. I shouldn't put the biggest ones on, because if they don't bake the same time as the small ones, then there's nothing I can do about it in the casserole form. But if I'm baking them on the baking dish, I can always pull some out. So I think I'm actually gonna do like kind of these smaller ones as the 6 that go on here. So let's do 1, 2. And that way I can kind of control what happens in the oven to these other ones. Like maybe I'll pull the really small ones out earlier than I pull the big ones out. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this goes back in the oven now for 25 to 30 minutes. And we'll see if they become crescent rolls on top of the casserole dish. I'm a little worried that they'll like get undercooked, or maybe I'm a little worried that they'll puff up too much and touch each other. I don't know, we'll see what happens in there. All bets are off. All right, the casserole's out of the oven. I'm excited to give it a try. One thing that I noticed that's interesting is that the crescent rolls, they've sunk in a little bit, which I kind of expected. I think that'll be good. They'll be kind of filled with goo. They did get a little bit more brown in the casserole than they did when they were just on the sheet tray. I think, you know, they are done. Like you can see from the bottom that they got brown. They're light and fluffy, but maybe just because they were on the bottom rack, out of the 2 racks, they got hidden a little bit. I don't know what happened, but I'm excited to try the like dry crescent rolls versus the casserole crescent rolls and see the difference. So yeah, let's dig in. All right, I guess I'm just gonna scoop out a crescent roll, and whatever comes with it, comes with it. I'll try to get all the way to the bottom because that's where the celery was, but we'll see what happens. Oh, interesting. Oh, wow. Oh no, I got 2 eggs in that scoop. No. There is like some like water at the bottom, which is fascinating to me. I wonder where that came from. Yeah, just having a whole egg in the mix is not good. I can't say I'm gonna take a bite of the egg. I'm sorry. I really don't like hard-boiled eggs. You don't want to see me do that. Don't force me. But otherwise, I think it looks good. I'm excited. The green pepper looks nice and cooked. I've had issues in the past where you put the green pepper in at the end and it's like not cooked enough, and that bothers me. So very excited about that. Yeah, let's dig in. It's so hot. The cream sauce and the chicken, perfect. And the dish is permeated with green pepper. I just don't like green bell pepper, what can I say? The crescent roll is very like gooey from the bottom side where it was touching the casserole, but very dry on top. Just a very floury dough. I can't really taste the cheddar cheese all that much. It is kind of giving me biscuit vibes, but I don't know. I'm surprised that like the flavor of the casserole doesn't really have the egg throughout. Like I'm sure if I took a bite of the hard-boiled egg, which I don't want to do, I would taste it. But I was afraid that the egg would kind of permeate the whole dish, and it didn't, which is good. It really just tastes like kind of a creamed chicken. It doesn't have as much flavor as the chicken pot pies I made recently. Like I almost would have preferred that cream sauce from that dish to this one. And this one is just a little bit more, I won't say bland, but softer of a flavor. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed in the cheese crescents. I wish they were better. It's something about this flour, this like dough mixture that I made felt like it was missing something when I was making it. Like it should have had some sort of fat in it, and it didn't. I mean, it had a little bit of oil, but yeah, it's a bit confusing to me why we wouldn't use butter in these to make them really like flaky and crumbly and melt in your mouth instead of just getting kind of gummy. They're not bad, they're just not very good. Dinner in a dish. It was a dinner in a dish. Was it a very good dinner? I don't think so. I mean, this is from the budget casserole section, and if you are on a budget or you're trying to just like use up what you've got in there for your fridge, this is the perfect meal to do that, because I really think the things she said to put in here are kind of random. So like some meat, some hard-boiled eggs, some vegetables, I don't know. You really could like do whatever you want with this kind of formula of like some protein, some vegetables, the white sauce, bake it. It's just very gooey. I almost think that like it would have been better if it had some like rice or noodles in it to kind of balance it out. I guess you have the biscuits on the side, which are like the carb component. But yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of nothing to write home about. Like a little lackluster, a little bland. Like I said, the hard-boiled eggs really threw me off. I don't want to eat those in a casserole. So yeah, and then the cheese crescents, while they look cool, and I'm excited that I was able to make crescents, and I think that this kind of proves to me that you can make a crescent roll from scratch at home without buying the like can of dough. This particular recipe was just a little dry and a little gummy. I'm missing a little bit of butter or shortening in there that would give it a flakier, more tender flavor. So, and you didn't really get a ton of the cheese flavor from them, even though I intentionally put a more powerful flavored cheese in there. I think cheddar is even more easy to taste than American, so I'm surprised I couldn't really taste the cheese, but otherwise, it's okay. It's an interesting concept, wasn't great. So I think I'm gonna give it 2 out of 5 red spoons. Okay, back in the box. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this week's casserole recipe, I recently made another creamy chicken with pastry on top dish, so you should check out Little Chicken Dinner's next. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and until next time, happy homemaking.